Hello everybody, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we shall be analyzing the Hindu newspaper dated 12th of November 2018 of the New Delhi edition. The topics to be discussed today has been presented on the screen. Timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. Let us begin our today's discussion. This particular article appears on page number 14. The title of the article is Decoding the Central Board of the RBI. Now this particular article discusses about the roles, responsibilities and the composition of the Central Board of Directors of the RBI. Hence, this particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 3, Indian Economy and Various Issues. Now this particular article has appeared in the newspaper because of the growing differences between the RBI and the government on various issues, wherein recently the government of India threatened to invoke Section 7 of the RBI Act against the Central Board of Directors. So as part of this video analysis, we shall look into the composition of the Board of Directors as well as understand the roles and responsibilities entrusted to this particular board under the RBI Act. The Reserve Bank of India is actually a statutory body which has been created under the RBI Act 1934. Subsequently, it was established on April 1st, 1935 and on Jan 1st, 1949, it was later nationalized. Now with respect to the roles and responsibilities of the Central Board of Directors, this particular board exercises general superintendence and management of the affairs of the Reserve Bank of India. That is to say that all the major decisions of the Reserve Bank of India is taken by this particular board. Further, the Central Board also recommends to the government on the design, form and the material of the banknotes to be used in India. And with respect to the composition of the Central Board, this particular board has a maximum number of 21 members. And these members include the governor of the RBI, the 4 deputy governors, the 4 directors representing the local boards of the RBI headquartered at Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai and Kolkata, the 2 representatives from the finance ministry, and usually these 2 representatives include the economic affairs secretary and the financial services secretary. And lastly, this particular board also includes 10 directors nominated by the government from various fields. So totally, the Central Board has a maximum number of 21 members and it is headed by the RBI governor. And with respect to the tenure of the governor and the deputy governor of the RBI, normally the tenure is for 3 years and it cannot exceed 5 years. Further, the Central Board has to meet at least 6 times in a year, and out of these 6 meetings, at least 1 meeting has to be called by the RBI governor every quarter. Now these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the Central Board of the RBI. Apart from the Central Board of the RBI, one important committee under the Reserve Bank of India is the Monetary Policy Committee. Now this particular committee has an important function of formulation of the monetary policy in India. And this particular committee has been set up based upon the recommendations given by the Urjit Patel Committee, and the working of the Monetary Policy Committee is governed by the Monetary Policy Framework Agreement which has been signed between the Reserve Bank of India and the government. As part of this framework agreement, the Monetary Policy Committee has adopted inflation targeting, under which it is required to maintain an ideal rate of inflation of 4%. However, it has been given the flexibility of increasing or reducing the rate of inflation by plus or minus 2%. That means that under the inflation targeting, the MPC has to always maintain the rate of inflation between 2 to 6%. However, the ideal rate of inflation which it is targeting is 4%. More importantly, it is to be noted here that this rate of inflation which the RBI is targeting is the consumer price index and not the wholesale price index. Now, this is one important aspect which you should know from the exam perspective. And with respect to the composition of MPC, the MPC has totally 6 members. Out of these 6 members, 3 members are from the RBI and the remaining 3 members are from the government, wherein the 3 representatives of the RBI include the RBI governor, who acts as the chairperson of MPC, one deputy governor, and a nominated official from the RBI. And the three nominees of the government are selected based upon the recommendations given by the Search cum Selection Committee, which is headed by the Cabinet Secretary. So this particular committee recommends the names of the nominees to be included in the MPC. And with respect to the decision making, the MPC works on the principle of one member, one vote, and the decisions of the MPC is based upon the majority. However, in case of a tie between the votes, the chairperson of the MPC, that is the RBI governor, would have the right to exercise a second or a casting vote. Now, this is how the decisions are taken by the MPC. And with respect to the vote of the RBI governor, you need to note that during the first time voting, he votes as a normal member. However, in case of a tie, he would be exercising a second vote. Now, these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the Monetary Policy Committee. Let us now look at some of the previous year UPSC prelims questions related to this particular topic. Now, this was a question asked in the prelims 2017. The question was, which of the following statements are correct regarding the Monetary Policy Committee? The first statement is, it decides the RBI's benchmark interest rates. Now, as discussed, this particular statement is correct. Now, coming to the second statement, the second statement is, it is a 12-member body, including the governor of the RBI, and is reconstituted every year. Now, this particular statement is wrong because as discussed, the MPC consists of 6 members and not 12 members. And the third statement is, it functions under the chairmanship of Union Finance Minister. Now, this particular statement is also wrong because as discussed, it functions under the chairmanship of RBI governor. So the correct answer to this particular question is A, that is one only. So based on the discussion which we had so far, these are the two prelims based questions for your practice. Please go through these two questions and give your answer in the comment section given below. So having analyzed all the aspects related to this particular article, let us now move to the next article. Now this particular article appears on page number 14. The title of the article is Behind India's Leap in Ease of Doing Business. This particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 3, Economy, under the subsection Indian Economy and Various Issues. Now, this particular article has appeared in the newspaper in the context of the release of Ease of Doing Business Index by the World Bank. And this particular report has highlighted that among the 190 countries ranked across the world, India's ranking has improved from 100 to 77. Thus, as you can see, India's ranking has improved by almost 23 places. So as part of this video analysis, we will understand as to what factors led to improvement in India's ranking, on which parameters does India lag as compared to the other countries, and lastly, we'll also look into certain criticisms against the Ease of Doing Business Index. Here you should note that the World Bank uses totally 10 indicators for measuring the ease of doing business. The list of indicators has been displayed on the screen for your reference. Now, this particular article highlights that the two main reasons for improvement in India's ranking is with respect to improvement in the rankings for the construction permits as well as the trading across the borders. We can see this clearly here, wherein India's ranking on the construction permits is presently 52 as compared to 181 in the previous year. Similarly, with respect to trade across the borders, India's ranking has now improved to 80th position. Now, because of the drastic jump in India's ranking on these two indicators, India's overall ranking on Ease of Doing Business Index has jumped by almost 23 places. At the same time, this article highlights that India has a long way to go with respect to two parameters, and these parameters are registering property and paying taxes. Wherein you can see in this particular table, for both these parameters, India's ranking is considered to be considerably poor. So having understood as to what factors led to improvement in India's ranking and on which parameters India still lags behind, let us try to understand some overall criticism against the Ease of Doing Business Index. Now with respect to first criticism against Ease of Doing Business Index, now this particular index takes into account only two cities from India, that is Delhi and Mumbai, for calculating the index. So it is being argued that this particular index does not reflect the true picture of the entire Indian economy, since the business regulations in the other cities is not being considered. And secondly, it has been stated that In order to improve the ease of doing business index, the government focuses on improving the business regulations in only two cities, that is Delhi and Mumbai. And this would in turn lead to neglect of improving the business regulations in the other cities of India. Secondly, it can be stated that the ease of doing business index is not a comprehensive index. This is because it takes into account only 10 indicators for measuring the ease of doing business. Further, one should note that one of the most important parameter from the business perspective happens to be labor laws or the labor regulations. However, the ease of doing business index does not take these labor regulations into account. Now, because of these reasons, it can be stated that the ease of doing business index is not very comprehensive. And with respect to the third criticism, the ease of doing business index influences the countries across the world to improve their regulatory framework in order to improve their overall rankings. And this in turn creates a tendency among the countries to issue easy environmental clearances and land acquisition. So easy environmental clearances and land acquisition may lead to adverse environmental and social consequences in the long term. And lastly, it can be stated that when the countries across the world overemphasize on improving their ease of doing business index, they tend to neglect other social indicators such as education and health. And this is evident in India's poor ranking on some of the international reports such as the Global Hunger Index, the Human Development Index, and Environmental Performance Index. So these are some of the criticisms against the ease of doing business index. So based on the discussion which we had so far, this would be a prelims question for the practice. Please go through this particular question and give your answer in the comment section given below. Similarly, the mains question for your practice would be, the doing business report of the World Bank has fundamental flaws and may lead to adverse environmental and social consequences in the developing countries such as India. Discuss. Now you can try writing answer to this particular question by looking at the video analysis. With this, let us now move to the next article. Now this particular article appears on page number 14. The title of the article is Richer but More Unequal. Now this particular article is based upon the Global Wealth Report 2018, which highlights that while the Indians have grown wealthier in the recent years, the extent of inequality between the richer and poor Indians has comparatively increased. Hence, this particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 3, Economy, under the subsection Indian Economy and Various Issues. The facts and figures given in this particular article are not important from the exam perspective. However, you need to have conceptual understanding of the Lorenz curve and Gini-Coefficient, which deal with the extent of inequality in a country. So, as part of this video analysis, we will understand the concepts of the Lorenz curve and Gini-Coefficient. The Lorenz curve is a graphical representation of the extent of inequality in a country, and this was developed by Max Lorenz in the year 1905. So as part of the graphical representation of the extent of inequality in a country, the cumulative percentage of a population in the country is plotted against the x-axis, and the cumulative percentage of income is plotted along the y-axis. Before understanding the concept of the Lorenz curve, let us first understand the concept of the line of perfect equality. Now a country is said to be perfectly equal if 25% of a population in a country holds 25% of the total income. Similarly, 50% of the population in a country holds 50% of the income. So one can say that if the cumulative percentage of a population in a country holds the same level of cumulative percentage of income, then a country can be said to be perfectly equal. Further, this line of perfect equality is inclined at 45 degrees to the x-axis. Now, as discussed, the Lorenz curve is a graphical representation of the extent of inequality in a country. You can clearly see here that the bottom 25% of the population in a country holds less than 25% of the cumulative income. Similarly, the bottom 50% of the population in the country holds less than 25% of the cumulative income. So this particular Lorenz curve shows that the majority of the income in a country is concentrated only in some percentage of the population in a country. Now the Gini-Coefficient is calculated based on the Lorenz curve, wherein the formula for the Gini-Coefficient is equal to A divided by A plus B, wherein A denotes the area between the line of perfect equality and the Lorenz curve. On the other hand, B represents the area between the Lorenz curve and the x-axis. Now if A is equal to 0, now what this means is the Lorenz curve lies along the line of perfect equality, due to which this particular shaded area becomes equal to 0. In that particular case, the Gini-Coefficient will be equal to 0, and such a scenario is referred to as the perfect equality in a country. Similarly, if the shaded area B becomes equal to 0, that means if the Lorenz curve lies along the x-axis, in that particular case, the Gini-Coefficient will be equal to 1, and this would show that there is perfect inequality in a country. Thus, what we can conclude in this particular case is that as the Gini-Coefficient increases, the extent of inequality in a country also increases, wherein a Gini-Coefficient of 0 denotes perfect equality and the Gini-Coefficient of 1 denotes perfect inequality. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the Lorenz curve and the Gini-Coefficient. So based on the discussion which we had, this would be your prelims question for the practice. Please go through this particular question and give your answer in the comment section given below. With this, let us now move to the next article. The next article appears as an editorial on page number 8. The title of the article is Ripples of Discord. This particular editorial shall be important from the perspective of prelims under the subsection General Science. Now this particular editorial highlights the role of Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory known as LIGO in detecting gravitational waves. So as part of this video analysis, let us first understand certain basic details related to gravitational waves and their detection. Now coming to the basic understanding of gravitational waves, the gravitational waves are produced when two massive bodies such as planets or stars orbit each other. Such a movement of the massive bodies causes ripples in the space. Now these particular ripples in the space are like the ripples in a pond when a stone is tossed in, and these ripples are in turn known as the gravitational waves, and these gravitational waves are invisible and they travel at the speed of light. Now these gravitational waves are produced when the objects in the space move at a very high speeds. Some of the events that cause gravitational waves include explosion of a star, that is supernova, when two big stars orbit each other, or when two black holes orbit each other and finally merge. Now, these are some of the events which can cause the gravitational waves in the space. Further, it is to be noted that the gravitational waves are extremely difficult to detect. This is because the celestial objects such as planets and stars are located far away from the Earth. So by the time the gravitational waves reach the Earth's surface, they would have become already weak. So since the gravitational waves become weak by the time they reach the Earth's surface, it becomes extremely difficult to detect these waves. So the question which can be raised here is that how come the scientists detected these gravitational waves then? Here you need to note that whenever the gravitational waves pass by the Earth, it leads to the squeezing and stretching of the space, and this squeezing and stretching of space is in turn detected by the LIGO observatory. Now this particular LIGO observatory has two arms which are approximately 4 km long, and whenever the gravitational waves pass by the Earth, there is a change in the length of these arms, and this change in the length of the arms is in turn detected by the lasers, mirrors and other sensitive instruments which are part of the LIGO observatory. So this is how the scientists have been able to detect the gravitational waves. Now here, this particular editorial has highlighted that LIGO has so far made 6 detections of the gravitational waves. However, the recent controversy related to the detection of the gravitational waves is that some of the scientists have argued that during the detection process, the scientists at the LIGO have not weeded out the noise, because of which the gravitational waves were not clearly observed. It is in this particular aspect LIGO has decided to come out with a research paper that carries detailed explanation on the disputed issue of the noise. So this particular article is essentially a news in transition. Let us wait and watch for the research paper to be published by the LIGO with respect to the detection of gravitational waves. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the gravitational waves. Now this was a related question asked in the prelims 2017. The question was, what is the purpose of ELISA project? This particular ELISA project has been conceptualized by the European Space Agency in order to detect the gravitational waves. So the correct answer to this particular question is B. So based on the discussion which we had so far, this would be our prelims question for the practice. Please go through this particular question and give your answer in the comment section given below. With this, let us now move to the next article. The next article appears on page number 9. The title of the article is Protect the Little Helpers. This particular article discusses about the species of pollinators under threat. So this particular article becomes important from the perspective of GS Paper 3 Environment under the subsection Conservation and Environmental Pollution. This article is also important because in previous year UPSC prelims questions have been asked with respect to the pollination. Now this particular article is based on a report published by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, which highlights that the pollinators across the world are facing growing threat due to human activity. So as part of this video analysis, we will understand the importance of pollinators to the ecosystem, the growing threats to the pollinators, and the steps to be taken to preserve the pollinators. Now with reference to the importance of pollinators such as honeybees, these pollinators provide for essential ecosystem services wherein the pollinators account for almost 35% of the global crop production, and they are also extremely important for promoting the plant biodiversity. This is because there is greater correlation between the plant biodiversity and the pollinator diversity. So increase in the pollinator diversity leads to increase in the plant biodiversity as well. Further, the population of the pollinators is considered to be one of the great indicator of the overall health of the ecosystem. And lastly, increase in the pollinator population leads to increase in the crop yields as well as leads to production of higher quality crops. With respect to the threats faced by the pollinators, some of these threats include the rapid urbanization, the monoculture cultivation in agriculture, and enhanced use of pesticides and fertilizers, which lead to the olfactory impairment of the pollinators. This olfactory impairment adversely affects their sense of smell, which is considered to be extremely important for the pollinators. Now, based on a recent study, it has been stated that the decline in the bee visits has adversely affected the yield of the apple trees in Kashmir as well as the yield of mustard cultivation in North India. Thus, one can clearly see here that the decrease in the pollinator population has adversely affected the crop yields in India. So, looking at the importance of the pollinators to the ecosystem, let us understand how the pollinators can be preserved. Now, some of the steps which can be taken to preserve the pollinators include promotion of organic farming, reducing the usage of pesticides and fertilizers, and finally, the waste or the fallow lands should be used for planting the flowering species, which would in turn give a boost to the pollinator population. Now, these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the pollinators. Let us now look at some of the previous year UPSC prelims questions related to this particular topic. Now, this particular question was asked in the prelims 2017. The question was, due to some reasons, if there is huge fall in the population of species of butterflies, what could be its likely consequences? The first statement is, the pollination of some of the plants could be adversely affected. Now, as we have discussed, this particular statement is correct. The second statement is, there could be drastic increase in the fungal infections of some cultivated plants. Now, this particular statement is wrong. And the third statement is, it could lead to fall in the population of some species of wasp, spiders and birds. Here you need to note that some species of birds feed on the butterfly. So decrease in the population of butterfly adversely affect the population of the birds as well. So the statement number 3 is correct. So looking at the options here, the correct answer to this particular question is C. That is 193 only. Now coming to the question asked in the prelims 2012, the question was, consider the following kinds of organisms: bat, bee, bird. Which of the following are pollinating agents? Now here all the three organisms act as pollinators. So the correct answer to this particular question is D, that is 1, 2 and 3. So based on the discussion which we had so far, this would be a prelims question for the practice. Please go through this particular question and give your answer in the comment section given below. With this, let us now move to the next article. Now the next article appears on page number 18. The title of the article is Largest Brain Mimicking Supercomputer Switched On. Now this particular article highlights that the world's largest supercomputer, which is designed to work in the same way as the human brain, has been switched on for the first time. So this particular article shall be important from the perspective of prelims under the subsection General Science. The University of Manchester, located in United Kingdom, has switched on a supercomputer known as Spiking Neural Network Architecture, also known as the SpiNNaker. And one of the most unique aspects related to this particular supercomputer is that it uses the same communication architecture used by the human brain, wherein it sends signals in the same way as used by the biological neurons in the human brain. With respect to applications of the supercomputer would enable the scientist to better understand the working of the human brain. Further, this supercomputer can also be used for controlling the robots. Now these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to this particular supercomputer. With this, we have come to end of today's discussion. Now let us look at the question for the day.